Raed Safadi joins me now, and he is the Deputy Director of the Trade and Agriculture Directorate at the OECD. You've just been a panellist in the forum talking about food security. What did you hear from the forum this morning?
Well, what is critical to retain in this morning discussion and throughout the day actually is the critical role of policy in terms of bringing the sector up to the challenges it faces, whether on the environmental front, on the malnutrition and undernourishment, the poverty front, you name it. Policy has a critical role to play, and this is a forum that actually opens up discussions across all the players and stakeholders within the sector, right? So me as a researcher in this area, I'd like to hear the farmers' views, the big companies, the small companies, all the stakeholders' views and take on what kind of policies they would require to actually increase agriculture productivity growth in a sustainable manner, right? And at the same time, of course, bring in new technologies and be a good stewards of agriculture and land and all its resources.
This is the 8th forum. These kind of complicated but important topics have been debated before. It's the same debate and yet it's different every year. What are the key differences? What's the sentiment, do you think, this year? You talked about the policy framework being important. How much of a space for innovation, for entrepreneurship that we hear about, we hear is so important. How much of a policy space is there for that in your view?
Yeah, this is the struggle always to have that policy space. First, to get rid of the bad policies, right, that are diverting resources or from the sector or that are using the resources in an inefficient manner, right? And focus on identifying the problems and the solutions, right? So a quick example, a very short example, relates to the poverty and the issue and the number of undernourished people in the world, right? What is the best way of actually responding to their challenge, right? How do we reach objectives that are now being set up in the Sustainable Development Goals, right? These are now being identified, to be agreed during the September UN meeting. So it's a new era. It's an opportunity to come in and define a new policy space, if you will, right? But most importantly, to see the trade-offs across all these policy areas, where, as I said before, this sector is being called upon to respond to many challenges that are within and beyond the sector and within a national economy and across the global economy.
We've heard from some of the new commissioners this morning, so the voice is there. I wonder what you make of what you've heard. We've also heard from Arun Gandhi, who gave the opening address this morning, and he talked about looking beyond profit. It's a simple message, but it's hard to put that into practical terms.
Yes, indeed, but at the same time, I mean, my understanding of how the market functions is that the signals that the markets emit, right? I mean, the signals in terms of prices, in terms of profits, and then the decision to invest and what to invest and when to buy a technology, when to adopt a technology. All these things are geared towards, one specific element, which is, amongst others, of course, profits, right? So I cannot just dispense of that target, no matter what the emotions are. Now, at the same time, there are critical issues in here in terms of the undernourishment, the poverty, right? And therefore, we want to look at ways to not, throw the baby with the bathwater in terms of the profits, but to see how those profits can be rechanneled, right, in order to raise the incomes and the status of the poor.
What would be your message or your hope? What would you want to leave as a last word? Because when we look at critics will say that economic policy, the European framework, it's just chipping away at what really needs to happen, the pressure on farmers to produce more, to input less, resource efficiencies that are needed. These are all extreme pressures, and every year we talk about this at the forum, but these pressures are growing on farmers year on year.
But the pressure on farmers is not to produce more, but to actually to produce more with less, right? That's the real pressure. Now, how do we achieve, the sustainability of this agricultural sector, right? That, as I said, has to adapt to climate change, has to mitigate climate change, and here the critical role of technology, right? And how do you actually, develop this technology, and then how you implement this technology, and where policy plays an important role.
You sound as if you feel there's tangible news coming out, because Europe can be conservative with a small c. The OECD is sometimes accused of being a conservative economic club. So you want the real forging ahead in terms of innovation, information technology, all of those things. That's the future.
That's the future, and from my perspective, right? I mean, it's easy to say we're conservative or what have you, but we can only read the signals coming from the markets, right? So the first thing, our first order of business is to actually ensure that these markets operate in an efficient manner, whether at the domestic, regional, and global level, right? And then we will be able to receive those signals from those markets and see how best policy can respond and help the sector achieve all its, whether you talk about the sustainable development goals and help farmers, raise their incomes and all these things. But the problem always, the issue always starts with problem definition, the right problem definition.
Well, problems and solutions at the forum today. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.